It all started when I left for college. Every night, without exception, I'd have the exact same dream. It always played out the same way. I'd open my eyes to pitch darkness, a void so profound it felt as though my sight had been ripped away and the entire world had simply ceased to exist. There was nothing but emptiness. Eventually, my eyes would begin to adjust, and faint shapes would emerge from the shadows, faint outlines forming in the darkness around me. In one corner, stacked neatly on top of each other, I'd spot two square shapes, boxes. Across the room, propped against the wall in the opposite corner, was a long, slender stick, a toy lightsaber I hadn't thought about in years. When I tried to move, my legs would crunch against something beneath me, plastic trash bags stuffed with an assortment of junk, forgotten toys, and who knows what else. And then, despite being the most obvious thing, my attention would always drift last to the rows of coats and jackets hanging directly in front of me. One coat would be so close to my face I could almost feel it brushing against me, suspended from hangers hooked onto a rack mounted to the ceiling. That's when it would click. I'd recognize the space instantly. I was inside my closet from back home. Everything in there was stuff I'd shoved inside over the years, things I either didn't need anymore or had been too lazy to get rid of. How could I not realize it sooner? Once I made sense of where I was, my attention would turn to the door. I'd maneuver myself toward it, lining up my gaze with the doorknob. Without ever lifting a hand, I never saw my hands in these dreams, the knob would start to twist all on its own, as though my mind was somehow willing it to move. Slowly, the door would creak open. What lay beyond was always the same, my childhood bedroom, unchanged from the day I left. My bed sat directly across from the closet, the sheets and blankets still a rumpled mess. I hadn't bothered to make it before heading off to college. To the side was my nightstand, its surface cluttered with things I'd left behind. The lamp I used to keep on while staying up late was switched off, its head folded down. A few old water bottles I'd neglected to toss were scattered around, and my alarm clock lay unplugged, silent so it wouldn't disturb the empty room while I was gone. Next to the nightstand was my bookshelf, crammed with the mystery and horror novels I used to devour, along with random knickknacks I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Beyond that stood my old desk, still buried under piles of papers and bits of junk left over from my high school years. The smaller of my two dressers sat against the wall perpendicular to the bookshelf, its top similarly overflowing with odds and ends, a testament to my indecision about what was worth keeping. Just outside my line of sight, near the closet door, I knew my larger dresser was there too, its surface no different. That was my room, my sanctuary, my safe haven for as long as I could remember. After I'd taken it all in, the closet door would slam shut without warning, plunging me back into a suffocating darkness. For a few agonizing seconds, it felt like I'd been swallowed by the void again, left blind and alone. Then, I'd wake up in my dorm room, drenched in sweat, my pillow damp and my heart racing. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I was homesick, badly homesick. It made sense that my longing for home had crept into my dreams. I figured it was just my subconscious yearning for the comfort of familiarity, for the warmth of the life I'd left behind. That's all it was. Or so I told myself. By the time the semester was halfway over, I got my wish. Fall break rolled around, and I packed up my car and headed back home for a few days. 3 hours later, I was there. Home again. I hugged my parents, caught up with old friends, and revisited my favorite spots around town. It felt like I'd never left. Most of all, though, I was thrilled to be back in my old room. Seeing my books again, sitting at my desk, lying in my own bed, it was like reconnecting with an old friend. That night, as I lay in bed, the covers still carrying the faint, stale scent of neglect, and the pillow firm and a little stiff from disuse, my eyes drifted toward the closet. It stood right at the foot of my bed, waiting. The closet door, a simple wooden frame painted white, stood closed, motionless, exactly as it should have been. My gaze lingered on it, and before I knew it, my mind drifted back to the dream I'd been having every night. The more I thought about it, the more unnerving it became. Why could I so vividly picture myself sitting in the pitch-black closet, frozen in place? I had never done that before, not once. So why did it feel so real in my mind? The thought unsettled me. A strange uneasiness crept in, and for a fleeting moment, an intrusive thought surfaced: what if there's something in the closet? But I quickly pushed it aside. That was ridiculous. Of course, there was nothing in there. I was letting my imagination get the better of me. The dreams were just a side effect of homesickness, a reflection of my restless, anxious mind. I knew my closet well enough. I'd rifled through it countless times, dug around for things I'd lost, even peeked inside just out of curiosity. Sure, it didn't have a light, so it was always dark in there, but that didn't make it some ominous void. My mind had simply pieced together what it thought sitting in a dark closet would be like. That's all it was. Now that I was home, I figured the dreams would stop. There was no reason for me to feel homesick when I was in my own house. It seemed logical that the whole thing would end, at least while I was back. Or so I thought. That night, lying in my old bed, I drifted off to sleep, feeling the comforting familiarity of home. But the dream returned. It began the same way it always did. The suffocating darkness. The faint shapes coming into focus. The closet doorknob twisting open, seemingly by itself. The slow creak as the door swung open to reveal my bedroom, untouched and unchanged. Up to that point, everything followed the usual pattern. But then, something was different. For the first time, the bed wasn't empty. Someone was lying in it. Under the covers, I could see the figure of a person. The gentle rise and fall of their chest was unmistakable, like the steady rhythm of a seesaw. My heart raced. Who the hell is that? Then something new happened, something that had never occurred in the dream before. I left the closet. It was like I was gliding forward, though I couldn't feel my legs or feet moving. I wasn't walking, it felt more like I was being carried by an invisible force. At the same time, it almost seemed like the bed was stretching toward me, inching closer with each passing moment. Of course, that wasn't actually happening. I was the one moving, but it didn't feel that way. Crossing the threshold of the closet, I floated into the room. Despite knowing every inch of it, my bedroom felt unfamiliar, hostile even, as if I were stepping into enemy territory. I drifted to the side of the bed that wasn't against the wall, moving silently toward the headboard. When I reached the top of the bed, I looked down at the person lying beneath the covers. It was me. The person in the bed, drenched in sweat, trembling slightly, was me. I stared, watching myself shiver and mumble in fear. The words I could make out were strained and shaky, filled with confusion and dread. What is this? What's going on? No. No. As I stood frozen, staring at my terrified, sweating self, something else happened, something that had never occurred in the dream before. I saw a hand. But it wasn't my hand. Out of nowhere, a hand entered my line of sight. It wasn't human. It was long and spindly, almost like a withered twig, its structure unnervingly thin. The skin wasn't normal either. It was rough and gnarled, like weathered sandpaper, and stretched so tightly over the hand that it looked more like bare bone than flesh. The nails were worse, sharp, jagged, and menacing. I couldn't move, but my mind raced with horrifying thoughts. I could imagine that skin scraping against mine, the damage it would do, the agony it would cause. The thought of those nails tearing into me made my stomach churn. And there it was, right in front of me. That grotesque hand, hovering in the darkness. The nails, if you could even call them that, were long, with razor-sharp, pointed tips. They weren't like any fingernails I'd ever seen, they were gray and jagged, appearing to be made entirely of bone. Along the edges, tiny serrations caught the faint light, making them look like miniature bone saws, sharpened to perfection. They were so sharp, I felt certain even the lightest touch could slice through flesh as easily as paper. As if to confirm my worst fears, the hand began to move. It drifted down toward my sleeping face, slow and deliberate, until the tip of its bony pointer finger rested against my right cheek. With the gentlest motion, it made a small, shallow scratch. The result was immediate. Blood began to pour from the cut, warm and vivid red, streaking down my face and soaking into the pillow beneath me. Somehow, I didn't wake up. Instead, I winced in my sleep, my voice weak and strained as I muttered through the pain. "Ow, it hurts, it hurts." The creature, or whatever it was, didn't linger. Once it had inflicted its wound, it turned abruptly and darted back toward the closet, moving with an unnatural, bone-snapping speed. Before disappearing into the darkness, it paused at the closet door, turning back toward the bed as if to watch me one last time. Then, with a force far greater than before, it slammed the door shut behind it. The violent sound jarred me awake. I shot upright in bed, letting out a panicked yell, my chest heaving as I gasped for air. My skin was slick with sweat, and my heart thundered in my chest like it was trying to escape. As I tried to calm down, a sharp sting on my cheek snapped my attention back to reality. I raised a hand to my face, feeling something wet and warm dripping down. It wasn't sweat, it was too thick for that. I brought my fingers into view, and my stomach dropped. Blood. Bright red blood smeared across my fingertips, oozing from a fresh cut on my right cheek. The same cheek the creature had scratched in my dream. The realization froze me. My mind raced as I stared at the crimson stain on my hand. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. But before I could even begin to make sense of it, a loud, sudden bang came from my closet. I screamed, instinctively kicking off the covers and scrambling backward until my back pressed hard against the headboard. My chest tightened, and I could feel every frantic beat of my heart as I stared wide-eyed at the closet door. Another bang echoed through the room, louder this time. The closet door trembled, straining against its hinges as if something massive was ramming into it from the other side. I heard a shuffle, then a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. It hit me then, hard and fast. I had been wrong. Completely, terrifyingly wrong. Those eyes I'd been seeing through in my dreams. They weren't mine. They'd never been mine. They belonged to it. That creature, whatever it was, had been living in my closet all along. Watching. Waiting. Peeking through the door night after night, searching for me. Whether it had been there my entire life or had only moved in when I left for college, I didn't know. What I did know was that it was here now, and it wanted me. What was this thing? As the thought crossed my mind, I heard the unmistakable sound of the doorknob turning. Slowly, painfully, the closet door began to creak open.